picking and choosing pieces from around the NHL rumor mill the past few days, we have ourselves a video that I wanted to dive into that talks about one guy and two teams. Two teams that definitely don't like each other. Teams whose fan bases don't like each other, but oddly enough, two teams that actually share a decent amount of players going back the past few years. From Alex Galchenyuk to Victor Mete to Max Pacioretty and Joel Edmondson. Today we are talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, and one of their pending UFAs who, at the time of me speaking into this microphone, does need a contract. Now, I am recording this audio on the night of Sunday, June 22, so by the time this YouTube video is public on YouTube, if there is a contract extension handed out to this player, if he has re-signed in Toronto for a dollar amount that's a lot more expensive than what we're going to be talking about in this commentary, then you have all the right in the world to call me a fool and to call me out on my BS. I think the last time this happened was when we had made the video about how the Duncan Keith trade from Chicago to Edmonton was rejected, but that video went public shortly after the actual trade was made, and I was asleep because the video was pre-recorded the night before, and that's just kind of how it happens sometimes. Who knows if it's going to happen here? But today, we are talking about former Toronto Maple Leafs captain John Tavares and the latest on his contract situation with the Maple Leafs. He's 34 years old and coming off of a huge $11 million 7-year deal. For the most part, I think, a lot of fans would say that Tavares lived up to the hype that he had as a captain and top-paid player on Toronto. At least, at the very beginning, he certainly did. 88 points as a career high for Johnny T in his first season with the Maple Leafs. He then was a consistent point-per-game guy, and despite the fact that he ended up losing some foot speed as of late, and the fact that he actually lost the captaincy to Austin Matthews, John Tavares was still able to put up a 74-point campaign in 75 games this most recent season. Sure, he's a little slower than you would like him to be, but he's smart, he plays well defensively, he has that leadership, and he has the skill to produce 70-plus points on a year. John Tavares, even though he is 34 years old, is still a very valuable player. Which is why, when we head over to this article published by David Pagnotta 2 days ago, Trade Activity Picking Up as the NHL Draft Nears, you will find an update that is quite shocking and one that I think a lot of Leafs fans just cannot help but be embarrassed by. This is totally shameful. Take a look at what Pagnotta writes about at the beginning of the Here and There section of this article, which will be linked in the description. On Friday, we weren't sure whether contract talks between the Maple Leafs and John Tavares were close or far. We were told they are in the process, quote-unquote, of negotiating. Well, earlier today we were told the two sides aren't close at all. While we are still 10 days away from July 1st, leaving plenty of time to iron out a new deal, it sounds like the Leafs have pitched a 3-year deal worth less than $4 million a year. That won't get it done. Let's see how things progress. Let's just do some quick maths over here. Less than $4 million a year. Let's assume 3.9. It's a pretty conservative number just to play in that ballpark. 3-year deal worth $3.9 million a year. That's $11.7 million total. John Tavares was making $11 million a year since the 2018-19 season. The guy had himself 7 years of making $11 million averaged out, and now you're telling him, oh yeah, sorry, that dollar amount that was your AAV, we want you to make that in total on your next deal for the next 3 years long. No thank you. Sure, John Tavares is 34 years old, and sure, he probably won't get a contract that's in the $11 million range again. But a discount at 4.2 something, sub 4 point something? Like, bruh, what are you doing, Brad Treliving? This is not going to get it done. And I get it, you can talk about, oh, it's a negotiation, right? You have to start low and work your way up if you're the team, and you have to start high and work your way down if you're the player. That's a terrible lowball offer, and it should be shameful. This is how you treat a guy that was the captain of your team for 6 years? This is how you treat a guy who came in and was able to just take over in a leadership role? He was a point-per-game guy last year. What gives? Now, let's dive into some of the other numbers, because Craig Button, he spoke out about John Tavares earlier in last week's TSN programming, and he said that he thinks that the Tavares number is $7.5, maybe $8 million on the open market. Which is why now we are diving into some other teams that could be apparently in the mix here. An article on lapresse.ca goes out there and talks about how the Montreal Canadiens are looking for centers to strengthen their top 6 position. This was posted yesterday. It'll also be linked in the description. And the very first name that Simon Olivier Lorange writes about here is that same John Tavares. Let's read the write-up here. Away from Toronto, he is not the Maple Leafs' most talked about player, but he is coming off a 74-point season in 75 games. The 35-year-old in September would inject a dose of leadership into a still young Canadiens team, and it's assumed he's not looking for a very long-term contract. And I'm kind of thinking about it like this. If the Montreal Canadiens are willing to give John Tavares, let's say a 2-3-year contract worth $8 or $9 million a year, maybe it's more. Maybe it's a tad more than that if they go shorter term. Maybe it's cheaper if you go longer term. That's just kind of how it works, especially for a guy who's 34 turning 35. If the Montreal Canadiens go short term and they target somebody like Johnny T, I actually do think it's a really good, solid idea when you take into account the other development of younger Canadian centers. Michael Hage is supposed to be all that, and while I get it's been a talking point over the past few weeks that some analysts think that he could be a winger, I would probably beg to disagree here. Michael Hage looks like a center to me. But even if it's not Michael Hage, Owen Beck has progressed pretty nicely. You still have some other guys in the system that can get better. If you wanted to wait just a little bit longer for Hage to inevitably become an NHL caliber talent, maybe signing John Tavares for a 2-year deal isn't that bad of a stopgap, especially if he's able to provide top 6 caliber scoring, 70-plus points on a year, and some tremendous leadership on top of that. You also have the fact that Montreal is on the up and up. Toronto, I get it, there is this entire sentiment that's like, oh yeah, they were 1 win away from making the Stanley Cup Finals because they were the only team to take Florida to 7 this year. I get that there is that sentiment that Leafs fans love to bring up once in a while, but I do sort of think of Toronto in this very strange position now that Mitch Marner is going to leave, and I just don't see the optimism unless you're going to put all your chips in to try and sign Connor McDavid next year. And you can't really guarantee that that idea is even going to happen. So, in terms of just momentum and direction, this Maple Leafs team could lose out on Marner. They could lose out on John Tavares. Montreal, on the other hand, is on the up and up. If there's an opportunity for the hometown Toronto guy to leave because he's getting lowballed, if he wants to get some more money, then maybe Montreal's the spot. Who really knows? I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Johnny T to Montreal idea? And what are your thoughts on the Maple Leafs lowballing him? Let me know in the comments all your opinions. Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's not that he comes over to the Habs? Will he stay in Toronto and actually get a much higher contract than 3-point-something million AAV? I don't know. I want you to let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.